Get the lights, please, Brendan. Batman first appeared in Detective Comics, number 27, 1939. That was only 1 year after Superman first appeared in Action Comics number 1. This character became very popular. That DC, they ended up launching Batman, his own independent series in 1940, just about a year later, which included the origin of the Joker. This was the villain of the story. One thing that made Batman so popular was his interesting villains. Superman had some interesting villains, but Batman had this laundry list of these really interesting villains. The Joker, Catwoman, Scarecrow, Mr. Freeze, Penguin, Clayface, the Riddler, Poison Ivy, Mad Hatter, and Killer Croc, just to name a few. More recent, he's gone up against what's called the Court of Owls. It's a more recent group of villains. Fun fact about the Joker, his permanent smile on his face in the comics was never explained. It just happened. He just had this menacing, odd smile in the comics. The original artists, what they did to get the look of the Joker, they took a character from a 1920s silent film called The Man Who Laughs, and they took that image with a Joker playing card. You know, when you play cards, there's the Joker, right? So they took the Joker playing card and then this image, this character from a silent film in the 1920s called The Man Who Laughs, and they kind of merged them together, and that's how the Joker looks like the Joker. It wasn't until the Michael Keaton, the Tim Burton 1989 Batman movie with Jack Nicholson as the Joker, where he falls in that vat of acid and his face is kind of messed up. That was the first time that they had an origin of his smile. So he started back in 1939, but they didn't give him an origin of his look until 1989, which is kind of interesting. So the Joker, all the way through those comics, just had this odd look on his face, and they never explained it, in the comics at least. Batman's history is kind of interesting, his fictional history. He stood out among other superheroes. You guys tell me, what is one thing that's interesting about Batman that makes him stand out among other superheroes? He has no powers. That really is kind of like one of the big things. He has no, what's that? His richness? Yeah, being rich, right. We'll kind of get into some of that, but yeah, you're not wrong. So,
Joker doesn't have no powers either.
well, right, but I'm talking about the Batman universe, you know? So like compared to like Superman or Aquaman or the Green Lantern, those types of guys in DC, in the Detective Comics, Batman has no like superpowers. He's not super strong, he's not bulletproof, that sort of thing. He's just a normal guy. Well, in the start anyway. Right, we're gonna get to some of that, but him himself, like Superman, like if you shoot him in the eyeball, that bullet's gonna squish on the eyeball, right? For Batman, he dead, okay? he's a normal guy. He did not gain superpowers from a freak accident. He didn't gain superpowers or have superpowers because he was an alien coming to Earth like Superman was, that sort of thing.
He has a superhuman mentality.
We're gonna get into some of that, right? Yes, he does, you could say so. Batman, or Bruce Wayne, as many of you know is his real name, he was born into a wealthy family. His father was a businessman, and he grew a large business in the city of what? Gotham City. Superman's from Metropolis, which is a fictional city, and Batman's from Gotham, another fictional city. And in the comics, and I think in the movies actually, they're neighboring cities. I think a river or something separates them, I think, if I remember right. But they're fictional cities. It's thought that Gotham was actually modeled after Chicago, and that Metropolis was modeled after, does anyone know? New York, very good. So it's not for sure, but that's speculation, is what they think those cities are kind of modeled after. Anyway, his father was a businessman in Gotham City, and what he also did is, because he made a lot of money in Gotham, he also gave a lot of money back to Gotham. So his dad loved his hometown, you could say, of Gotham City, which then also shows us with Bruce Wayne why he stays in Gotham. He's kind of trying to save what his father loved, is kind of the idea. He didn't go to Metropolis like permanently. He didn't go to some other city or some other country. He stayed in his home city or his hometown, you could say. And it's thought that's because his father loved Gotham, and that's why he stayed there. When Bruce Wayne was a small boy, when he was a young man, maybe preteen, early teen, him and his parents were at a theater show in Gotham, and they were walking home. They were walking back to their car, and a mugger stopped them and ended up shooting and killing both his mother and his father right in front of him, which is, if you've seen the movies or know anything about Batman, that's basically his origin story. That would not have happened, or he would not have became Batman if that had not happened with his parents. So what Bruce did is he basically vowed at that time that he was going to rid Gotham City, the city that his father loved, of the muggers, of crime, because crime was what was, in his mind, and it is true, was what was decaying the Gotham City that his father loved. And so he wanted to rid the city of all the muggers and then all the crime as well. That is what he was trying to do, and it all relates back to when his parents got shot and killed by the mugger. He takes on the persona of a bat, not a lion, not a elephant, not a bug. Does anyone know why he took on the bat? Why?
Because in the video, it showed that he actually was in a well, but there was bats in the well that came flying out.
Yeah, that's true. But why did he still choose a bat? Why did he choose a bat?
Because he was afraid of them.
Because he was afraid of them, right. His idea was, I can't just go as a normal person, maybe even like just with a normal mask on or a disguise. I'm not going to intimidate. I'm not going to scare anyone. Bats terrified him, and we kind of see from the movie kind of the idea of why he's terrified of bats. So he used the bat symbol or the bat idea to strike fear into the criminals before he interacted with them. He would do a lot of intimidation before he would actually get physical. He tried to scare them, catch them, that sort of thing, especially in the comics. But that's why he chose the bat, because the bat scared him. Who's ever like seen a bat, like got inside your house or whatever? Raise your hand if you've seen a bat like up close. Some of you? Yeah. In Michigan, sometimes you have little brown bats that will get in the house and they'll kind of fly around or whatever. And they are a little...
They're cute.
I do think they're kind of cute. Like, I'm not afraid of them, but when they're flying around like a room, it's like, oh my gosh, it is a little scary, kind of. You don't know what they're gonna do. What's that? They're little and they just, like a mouse, they just sneak in. What'd you say, Evan? Did you? Yeah, I believe you. Yeah, it happens sometimes.
I think the bat that he scared, like the one that was in the thing, was the Gothic bat.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I
It's the
don't.
one with like the ears that stick way up.
The big ears and
they
probably
stick way
larger.
up, and then they have like
Yeah.
little rings in them, and they have like
Yeah.
a long snout.
I doubt there were little brown bats that he was afraid of. I bet you're right. It's something a little more intense than that, right? Okay, because of his family's wealth, and some of you already mentioned this. You had something, JJ?
They go back, so they call them little bags.
There's a, what's the biggest bat in the Amazon? What's that called? It's not called a bat. It's called a... Well, flying fox. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, they're like this big, Oh, they get really big? Oh, golly. Maybe that's what he was afraid of. I don't know. I've heard of the flying foxes though. They're a bat, but these ones are like this big. Their wingspan would be like that, or whatever. Golly, isn't that crazy? Yeah. I'd be afraid of that too. All right, because of his family's wealth, and this is kind of where some of you said like his suit is like kind of bulletproof and whatever. Because of his family's wealth, Bruce Wayne was able to equip himself with all sorts of tools and gadgets and armor and his arsenal of his vehicles, like the Batmobile and the Batwing, things like that. And he had a lot of non-lethal weapons. He was non-lethal pretty much throughout all the comic books up until recent, and then we see in the kind of more recent movies he does kill. It's not, there's no question about it. But early on, and when I was a kid, Batman had this code. He had this code, this kind of morality that he said, I may hurt someone, I may maim someone, I may break some bones, but I'm not going to cross the line into killing. Does anyone know why early on he had that vow? Let me get someone else, Tyler. Let me get someone else. Why do you think he had that vow? Why did he do that? Well, it was more than just he felt bad. Why did he do that? Okay, his parents were killed. You're getting a little warmer. So he said that I'm not going to what? Okay, he really liked the city, so he wasn't going to what?
He ain't gonna kill, he ain't gonna turn into a murderer like the other people.
Exactly. If he were to cross that line, in his mind, he would become just like the mugger that killed his parents. So early on in the comic books, and again, it's later on, he definitely kills people. We see that. But, I mean, he's not out executing people. That's not what he's doing. But like when he's running through the city and he does have guns on his Batwing and things like that, yeah, there's killing going on. But early on, he had this vow. He said, I'm not going to kill, because he didn't want to fall into the darkness. And basically that was his quote. If I fall into the darkness, I'll never get out.
Didn't he kill the Joker?
I think eventually, no, Superman, I think, ended up killing him, I think.
It was Batman.
They have multi-universes, and so I don't remember, like, the official timeline of him. I'm not sure, Caden. I don't remember exactly. There is a timeline where Superman kills the Joker. I know that for sure, but if that's the same timeline or not. Okay, so early on, he said, I'm not going to kill, because I'm not going to become like the criminals or the muggers or the bad guys that are in the city that my father and now that I love. He wanted to protect and try to heal that city, the Gotham City that he and his father loved. Oftentimes he would say to the other, when he joined the Justice League and that sort of thing, he would say to the other Justice League members, Superman, Wonder Woman, that sort of thing, he would say, you need to spend less time flying over the city and more time walking its streets. That's kind of how he was. He wasn't like, I'm just flying over, surveying. He got down in the alleyways. He got down kind of in the gritty areas of Gotham City because he was closer to, well, the bad guys and the danger and that sort of thing. All right, powers. We talked about Superman's powers last week. Let's talk about Batman. Like you already said, no superpowers. Zero. No superpowers. But he was a master of various fighting forms: kung fu, jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, kickboxing, etc., etc. He knew many languages. He was very, very intelligent. Isaiah mentioned that. He was very intelligent. He knew many languages. Sometimes the bad guys actually would be surprised by this. If they were speaking German or Russian or something else, he would then start speaking that language, and it would shock them sometimes. And sometimes he would find out secrets and stuff from the bad guys just based on he understood the language, and they didn't know that. So he was a master of various fighting styles. Some of his tools that he had and gadgets, the famous grappling gun that he would shoot with the line that he would, kind of wasn't flying, but he was pulling himself all over the city when he wasn't in one of his vehicles. He had smoke bombs, his batarang, that bat wing, kind of like boomerang looking thing. He would do that. And he had various different varieties of batarangs. In the bat cave, he had his computer, and especially in the comics, this is before computers really were a thing. It was like the supercomputer of the day, that sort of thing. And he could get all the information that he needed. Now, Superman, if you remember, he had the alter ego of Clark Kent. And where did he work?
News.
The newspaper. And do you remember why he worked there? Why did he work there?
Just like Superman grew up, we're all trying to
Right. That was his information stream. He had to be at the newspaper, which was called the Daily Planet. That way, Superman knew what was going on. That's why he was working there. Batman doesn't work at a newspaper place. He has this computer that he can just look up stuff. So he can tap into like surveillance cameras, just electronics, things like that. And again, back in the day, it was like this supercomputer thing that he would get all the information he needed from that. The Batwing is a pretty cool thing. Probably one of my favorite parts of any Batman movie is in the 1989 Tim Burton movie, kind of towards the end. He's in the Batwing, that jet thing he's got, and he flies straight up through the clouds, and he goes in front of the full moon. I don't know if you remember this or not, and he makes the bat symbol on the moon, and then he comes back down and he's fighting the Joker. Does anyone remember that part?
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about?
I
Okay.
don't remember.
These kids need to be cultured, Lewis. We should just play the
I know what
1989
you're
Batman
talking
movie,
about.
So you know what I'm talking about? Man, I tell you what, when I was a kid, I loved it. Yes, sir? Junior, are you going all the way back to the very beginning of my lesson? Is that what you're doing? I will tell it again to you, but I'm not going to ask it as a question. Do you still want me to tell you?
No.
You don't care, do you? That's really funny. He goes all the way back to the beginning. Yes, sir?
You know what you should do?
What's that?
Once we're done with this,
Uh-huh.
like no one will know that, like the movie he's talking about.
Uh-huh.
You should just, after all your lessons are done for this part,
Uh-huh.
You should just let everybody down in the gym and just watch it.
Just make them watch all of them. The old Supermans and the Batmans and everything we're gonna do. Well, we're gonna do Darth Vader, so we gotta watch all the Star Wars, you know.
You really need some new characters, don't you?
I do need some new characters. Okay, a couple more things on his powers. Again, he's very intelligent. He's actually nicknamed in the comics the world's greatest detective, because he wasn't just like I'm gonna beat you up kind of superhero guy. He would go into a crime scene and he would like figure out what happened, and he was very brilliant like that. He's called the world's greatest detective. I think there was even a Batman comic book called World's Greatest Detective. I think there was, or something like that. Okay. Weaknesses. He's human. He is a normal human guy. If he doesn't have his armor on, or whatever, he gets shot or something, he dead. He can catch a cold. I mean, he can get sick. I mean, there's lots of issues. He gets tired. He gets fatigued. That sort of thing. He is simply human. Now, has he trained his body and his mind to be almost, like you could say, superhuman? Yeah, but not anything more than someone who's very dedicated at their craft. You know, I think of Bruce Lee, for example. Like, they seem superhuman, but they still are just human beings. They're just very dedicated at whatever discipline they want to achieve. And along with that, some of his strengths, we already talked about some of these. He was very intelligent. His physical strength and fighting abilities were basically top-notch. Self-control, drive were just off the charts, and focus. He was just incredibly focused. Caden, turn around, please. He was incredibly focused, like Caden should be. Okay, here's where I really want to pay attention. You ready? Junior, you ready?
You're giving us hints now?
You ready? Okay.
He's gonna say pay attention and then he's not gonna ask a question.
Junior's ready. Lessons we can learn from Batman. Robbie, you ready? You ready? Okay. Lessons we can learn from Batman. Number 1. The only real limits that you have are those that you make yourself. The only real limits that you have are those that you make yourself. Batman has gone up against some of the strongest supers there are. In his universe, in his world, Killer Croc, Clayface, Bane were some of like the super strong, physically type characters. The League of Shadows, the Court of Owls are a couple of those groups that were incredibly difficult for him to have victory over. And you know, in the movie, and it did happen in the comics as well, he went up against even Superman himself and won. That's the crazy part. He would plan, he would study, he would know his enemy like to a T before he would attack. He would never just full on attack, you know, through emotions. He would study and he would know his enemy as best as he could before he would invoke an assault. He would target his enemy's what? What can you guess?
Weaknesses.
Weaknesses. Right. Is that what you're gonna say? He would target his enemy's weaknesses. We talked about Superman last week. One of the things, one of his weaknesses is sensory what? Do you remember?
Sensory details.
Well, no. No.
Overload.
What is it? Overload. And so that was one thing that Batman did, even in the Batman v Superman movie, is he had those like sonic cannon things that were shooting the sound waves at him. It's not gonna kill him, it's not even really gonna hurt him, but it's gonna delay him for a minute, and sometimes that's all you need. So he would target his weaknesses. Same with Bane, same with Clayface, same with Killer Croc, that sort of thing. Lessons we can learn from Batman. Number 2. Number 1 was the only real limit you have are those that you make yourself. Number 2 is he has, and you should have, a set of morals and values. If you can't write down 3 morals or values for yourself, you need to rethink your life. Like in general. Batman had a set of morals and values, and we should too. There are some things that we should, I should, you should, formulate in our minds that says, this is good for me, and this is not. That's a moral, that's a value that you hold to. This is good for me, whatever that may be, and this is not. This thing over here is good for me and it's good for the world, so therefore I'm going to adapt myself to that cause. I'm going to make myself ready to live out that value, whatever that value may be. Like Superman, he took his morals, he took his values, and he said, I'm going to use as a foundation my morals and values for good, and whatever power I have to execute those morals and values, I'm going to use them for good. So if you think about like Superman, for example, like his superpowers, being able to fly, super strength, that sort of thing, that's not what made him good. That's just what he could do. Batman, him being highly intelligent, him having wealth, him having tools, things like that, that's not what made him good. It's his morals and values underneath that that made him good. If he had all that power, like who would be someone in even the DC Comics that's just a human, that is incredibly wealthy, but he's like one of the biggest like super villains? I'll give you a hint. It's Superman's super villain. Who's that? Who's that, Junior? You remember? Oh, Bizarro? No. Who is it? No, that's Batman. Who is it?
His uncle.
No.
Wait.
Who is Superman's arch nemesis? He's a normal Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is just a guy. He's just a human being, but he's wealthy like Batman. So it's not his wealth or his tools that made him good or bad. It's what he chose to what? Do with it. Either you become Lex Luthor or you become Batman. Or even Junior kind of mentioned, or you become Superman, or if you know who Bizarro is, or become Bizarro, who is like Superman, but he's a bad guy.
I thought it was General Zod.
Well, that's a, no,
Yeah,
he's also
General Zod was one of the dudes
from his home planet, which would fit too. Yeah, would fit too. Yeah. Bizarro is literally an opposite of Superman. He looks like Superman, but he's...
General Zod was like the only one that could actually kill him because he was smart enough to use kryptonite against him.
Yeah. Okay. Where are we at here?
Also, if General Zod couldn't really kill him because he can't get close enough to kryptonite either.
True. So number one, the only real limits you have are those that you make up yourself. Number two, have a set of morals and values. Number three, you ready? Yeah. Everyone is afraid of something. Everyone's afraid of something. You can either let that fear push you forward or what? Push you down or back. Everyone's afraid of something. Everybody is. You can either let that push you forward or push you back. This is something that I heard even recently. A psychiatrist was talking about this. He said the most successful people in the world are those that are chasing something all the same while by also being chased by something. Let me try to say that again. The most successful people in the world are those that are chasing after something, but at the same time, something's chasing them. Let me give you an example. So if you have a dream or an ambition or a goal and you want to achieve something, it could, like in your situation, just schoolwork, for example. Maybe you want to get good grades. Maybe you want to not lose levels so you can go home. If you have a goal, you have something that you want to achieve. That's you chasing after something. Does that make sense? Something chasing you would be, for example, the fear of failure. So something's chasing after you that says, don't go that way. Down that way is pain. It's like this thing that's coming after you. It could be an addiction. It could be a relationship that you shouldn't be part of. It could be something coming after you that says, if I catch you, you're going to be in pain. So you're running from something, and rightly so. But all the same while, you're also chasing something that if you catch it, you're going to be happier. You're going to have more success or even joy in life. So the most successful people in the world are those that are chasing something, and they also recognize I'm being chased by something that I don't want to get caught by. Failure, for example. That's me in a nutshell. I'm not the most successful person. I'm not saying this as any pride or anything, but I am saying that most of my life has been those two things. I see a goal, I see something I want to achieve. It could be getting my education. It could be getting my master's degree. It could be building a house in Alaska. It could be having some sort of successful something. Having a furniture business that went from $19,000 a year to $100,000 a year in 9 months. I was chasing something.
You did?
Uh-huh.
You went from how much to how much?
Furniture business, $19,000 a year to $100,000 a year in nine months.
In 9 months?
So I was chasing after a goal, but all the while I knew that if I stopped, failure was right at my door.
Wait, so you were making 19,000 or 9?
Failure was right at my door. Do I need to do the math again? 19,000,
A year?
correct, to 100 in 9 months, correct, because I was chasing something.
Quick.
Does that make sense?
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, it was. It killed me too.
Yeah.
It
Like,
killed
I can
me.
see how that would kill you.
It killed me. Furniture was my life. I lived and breathed furniture for 9 months, you know. Yes, sir.
You were making $100,000 doing this job.
When I had the furniture business, it went from 19,000 a year to 100,000 a year in 9 months. No, I don't have that business anymore. Sort of. Yeah, sort of.
He's like, that's where I got my car.
Everyone is afraid of something. You can either let it push you forward or push you back. Okay. Warnings from Batman's life. You ready? Warnings from Batman's life. Having an unhealthy obsession. Having an unhealthy obsession will always lead to broken relationships and eventually being alone. This could be being a workaholic. I understand that. Being a workaholic, it could be being addicted to something. Doesn't have to be a substance, it could be a substance. It could be being addicted to a relationship that you know you shouldn't be in. It could be addicted to your own pride and ego. Not being willing to say, I need help. What this leads to is an imbalance in life. And any imbalance in life always leads to pain in some way or another. And when you're in pain, people know it. And what kind of people want to be around people who are in pain? None. If you are a pain breather, you're going to be avoided. You're going to be repelled. Unhealthy obsessions could be an addiction, could be something in life you're doing. Unhealthy obsessions always lead to broken relationships and ultimately being alone. We see that even in the early comics with Batman. Who is he sitting next to when he's in the Batcave?
Alfred.
Bruce Lee.
Well, Alfred did stay with him. Alfred did stay with him, but when he was alone.
Robin.
Eventually.
That was my second guess.
Eventually, and then he did join the Justice League. But when you look at the comic books of Batman and you see him and you open like a double page and it's 2 pages, you see all the computers and you see all the stuff in the Batcave, and you see this little chair and you see one person sitting in this dark cave. Batman was obsessed in an unhealthy way with trying to save Gotham. I'm not saying it wasn't like, what's the right word I'm looking for?
Bad.
Yeah, Alfred was around. Yeah, he was around. But he still secluded himself a lot. He isolated himself a lot. Not honorable, that's not the word I'm looking for. Doesn't matter, it's okay.
Stoic?
No, that's okay. Number 1, unhealthy obsession always leads to broken relationships and ultimately being alone. Number 2, and this is something that I think I've told some of you guys already, and this just kind of relates to Batman. Unprocessed pain, and I'll use the word again, always leads to poor behavior. You may have heard me use the illustration of a good dog. A good dog will bite its owner if it's what?
Scared.
Afraid.
Afraid or hurt. A good dog will bite its owner if it's hurt. I've seen this with my own eyes. There was this dog, I think it was a husky. It was a good dog. The owner had it for years. Never hurt a fly. And then somehow it got out on the street and got clipped by a car. It didn't kill it, but it broke its leg. So what the owner did, he'd had this dog for years. The owner went over and scooped up the dog, right? And what happened when he touched that leg?
Bit him.
It hurt, right? The dog has a broken leg. He didn't know it had a broken leg. We found out later. He scooped up the dog. It hurt its broken leg. And so what that dog do? Boom, just bit him hard.
You saved your life.
Yeah, I was out there. Yeah, I was out there for that one. I think it was a husky.
Watched it.
Yeah.
I want to get off.
Well, he kind of flopped it down because it was holding on. It was in shock, you know. It was hurting. So a good dog will bite its owner when it's in pain. Unprocessed pain will always lead to poor behavior. If you're in pain, you're gonna bite. If I'm in pain, I'm gonna bite. Think about a little example. So if you have a headache and you go into one of the houses and maybe someone's like kind of annoying you, are you gonna be all happy joy, or are you gonna be kind of sharp and kind of grumpy with them?
Probably grumpy.
Probably grumpy, right? So you got a headache or something, you stub your toe or whatever. Now I'm in pain. Don't bother me for 5 minutes. I might bite your head off, right? It's a little example. Someone in pain with unprocessed pain will lead to bad behavior. You will bite. It happens. And unfortunately, if you don't process this pain, if you don't get through it, like if you stub your toe, you have a headache, eventually the pain goes away, right? But sometimes there's pain, we can call it trauma, that sometimes people hold on to, and they don't have to. It doesn't mean that you forget about the event. It doesn't mean you don't learn lessons from the event. It just means you don't have to have this acute pain all the time, because then you will be a pain bearer. Relationships will be broken. Number 3, for sake of time. Number 3, warnings warnings from Batman's life. Kind of related. That same thing, unprocessed pain, we'll call it trauma, if you want to call it trauma, will eventually lead to mental and emotional disorders, whether we like to admit it or not. Unprocessed pain or trauma will eventually lead to mental and emotional disorders. Batman had acute anxiety. He had post-traumatic stress disorder. That's probably the most obvious one. His parents get killed right in front of him, and now through his whole adult life, he can't let it go. He had PTSD, 100%. And that led to, and because one leads to another, you have to understand how mental health works. One disorder, one stress leads to another. He had acute anxiety from his PTSD, which led to, does anyone know? Can you guess what his final one was? What do you think it is? Do you think you know what it is, Dominic?
It was like, how is his anxiety cute?
It was readily
You said
acute. Yeah, acute anxiety. It means you're always feeling it readily all the time. Like if you have anxiety, just like normal, there's different levels of anxiety and depression. There's 4 main types of depression, but we don't get into all that right now. Acute means you're feeling it all the time. Does that make sense? I didn't say acute anxiety, it's acute. Is that what you were asking? Okay, what do you think? So his PTSD led to acute anxiety, which led to what?
Depression.
That was there. OCD, very
Yeah,
good.
my OCD
Good
was my
job.
first guess, but then I said depression. I was like,
Right,
huh.
right.
That seemed lonely. in that
Very
back
good.
there.
Very good, Isaiah. So what that led to was OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. And you see that with, he's dressing as a bat, right? He's dressing as a bat running around the city. That's pretty insane, really. I mean, it's kind of cool in the movies. And I liked him as a kid, you know, comics and all that. I played Batman and all that. But really, if you think about it, like if that was real life, that doesn't work. You know, he would have been arrested or killed like instantly. Okay. I'm just gonna say this and I'll be done. Oh, don't say that, it hurts my feelings. No, I'm teasing. Pain, this is for Batman and it can be true for us too. Pain can lead to anxiety. Anxiety unresolved always leads to what in a man? Do you guys remember this? We've already talked about it.
anger.
Well, that would be a symptom. Starts with a D. Depression. So you have pain, which gave him anxiety, which that does the same thing to us, which if it's unresolved anxiety, this is any man. If you have unresolved anxiety, it will lead to depression. Because anxiety says there's a problem that I need to fix. And when a man cannot fix a problem, what do? They shut down. But if they can fix it, then they're actually energized, because we're fixers by nature. That depression, because now you're a carrier of pain, you're going to lose relationships. You have loss of relationships, which many times leads to what kind of abuse?
Mental.
Substance.
Substance. Why does that lead to substance abuse? Why does depression lead to substance abuse? Why?
You need like
Because it's the only thing that helps.
That's actually exactly right.
You need a thinker.
For that moment. Here's the problem with substances: alcohol, weed, even nicotine. Here's the problem with those things. You ready?
It does not help.
I speak beers.
Even heavier stuff. Here's the problem with substances. You ready? They work. That's the problem.
Low key.
They work for the moment. They make you feel better in the moment. Now, do they quickly make you not feel better? Depending on what the substance is. Yes, sir. Hold on.
It starts working until it starts to wear off and then you need it.
That's exactly right. It's a vicious cycle.
And then you keep doing it.
I had a family member. Hold on. I had a family member that we went over to their house it was on a Thursday. I think it was a Thursday. And they were in clothes, obviously. They were dressed. And they were just hammered drunk. Went over there on the Thursday. We were left for like 2-3 days. We came back to the same house. And that family member was in the same clothes, hammered drunk. So they're doing exactly, Logan, what you said. They don't like their life. They're in pain. They're depressed, whatever it is. They get drunk. They feel better, or they mask it, or they forget it for that moment. But then they start to sober up. And then what happens? They look around. They look around and my situation hasn't changed. So then what do? They start to drink again. And that's how it gets you. Yes, sir.
It's hard to see a family member go through that stuff,
Yes, sir.
especially when you can't just change it for them.
Yeah. Hard is not a good enough word,
Yeah.
but you're right. Yeah. But you're right, Logan. That's exactly why. It works for a moment, and then you come out of it. And the other problem is you always need more because your body gets used to it, right? So if it's weed or alcohol or whatever it is, the next time you need a little more. Next time you need a little more, and I tell you what, it's vicious. Okay. What does these things? Now I promise I'll be done. What do these things? Oh, I missed one. Social isolation. Is that what it leads to? Then self-harm, and then ultimately, what does it lead to? What is the end result of this road?
Anger.
That's way earlier, but you are angry. What's the ultimate end?
Dead.
What is it?
Dead.
What kind of death?
Suicide.
100%. You can have active or passive suicide. Batman was doing passive suicide. He really didn't care if he was going to live or die. He would sacrifice himself,
So active
his body.
suicide is when you do it yourself.
That's when you just do it. That's when you hang yourself, shoot yourself.
Just don't.
You just do it. That would be active suicide. Passive suicide is where you kill yourself doing something. Does that make sense? Like a workaholic is a good example. Then he dies of a heart attack 9 years in. That would be passive suicide. Yes, sir?
Victim mentality, all they play victim mentality.
The whole thing.
Everything,
Attention seeking.
everything like, oh, this always my fault. If that person did me, something like that, everybody hate me, I want to die.
That'd be included. Yeah, that'd be included. So pain, it all starts with pain. All of it, all the way back. That's the origin. Pain to anxiety, unresolved anxiety, depression, loss of relationships, substance abuse, social isolation, self-harm, and ultimately suicide. Yes, sir.
So like passive suicide, I'm gonna tell you a quick little story. Start to
Okay.
my dad was working, and he works downtown Grand Rapids, like one of the bad areas of Grand Rapids. And he was working. I can't remember where he was working, but he was working for I think a parts place. When it got robbed, and he was working that day. One of his coworkers wasn't like emptying up there too fast enough, I would say.
Uh-huh.
And he was shot right there on the spot.
Hmm.
And he died right there on the spot.
Wow. that could be that. It depends on the situation, you know, but that could be what that is. So, okay, you guys ready for pay attention prizes? All right, all right.